Hello, welcome to Cybersecurity Unlocked. Today, my guest is one of the most charismatic cybersecurity practitioners, Jerome Walter. Jerome has been in leadership roles for the last 12 years, firstly with Natixis in Hong Kong and Japan, before he moved to Singapore, where he was head of security architecture for Prudential. And then he moved to Pivotal as a field CISO, and he is now head of security modernization for VMware. How are you, Jerome? Good to see you, as ever.
Yeah, nice for having me and nice for the introduction. Thank you for the introduction.
No worries. How have you been the last few months?
Can't complain, really. Right? Been, I'm in a good industry. In field security, it's pretty safer than the rest of the industry. I'm working for a company that has been pretty supportive, so can't really complain. When we see the number of people leaving the country or having financial impact because of COVID, I can be very happy to be among the few that can focus on business and on family rather than just the stress of surviving. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, it's been a tough time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Have you been doing anything in the last sort of 3 or 4 months other than work?
Usual. We're in a field where it's need to always learn, so continuing to read books, to learn new things. I have new product to keep pace to, and I even managed to write or to contribute to a book. So it's been quite a busy 3 months. So
nice,
it's good. Yeah.
Okay, so when is this book due out?
It's a book due normally July, August. So. Well, it should be anytime soon, and it's the first iteration of an O'Reilly book on security chaos engineering. So the application of chaos engineering principle to improve security.
Right. Okay. Cool. I look forward to reading that when it comes out.
Yeah. It's interesting field.
Yeah. No, it is. It certainly is. So I was curious, how did you get started in technology and in the industry of security?
When I get started in technology is about 4-year-old when my dad first bought a computer. He was thinking that we might be the future. So I kind of grew with computers all my life. I don't know, in 97 I was already playing with Linux and all those stuff. So that's part of the technology. That's why I studied IT engineering. I moved to, basically... I think nowadays we can call the geek a geek. So I had 17 computers at home when I was younger. So that's for me natural move to technology. Started developing system engineering for companies, and then evolve slowly towards security. Interesting move, but can't regret really.
I know you've actually got one of those kind of unique backgrounds where you're in sort of a leadership now role and worked as a CISO, but you actually come from a programmer background and a development background. So that's actually quite unique.
Yeah, I would call myself more coming from an infrastructure and system background than programmer. I did code when I was younger, but I wasn't really that good. So, at one point you need to realize that if you can't be good at something, just move wherever you're good, and infrastructure was a way. I was a Linux guy in a team of Solaris, and then move on from there. Once you master one thing, you bigger picture of IT management, and move towards security. First from an angle of getting things right, quality management, infosec, and then as you move towards infosec, and then you need to go down to more breadth, straight into the risk management of technology. That was kind of the path.
Just still like mess about with any code today, or
I'm back into it. I'm back into it. I guess spending the last 18 months surrounded by developers kind of got me motivated. And I think there are still a few things that where the tool sets we have are not really up to my expectations, so I'm kind of trying to code a few things on areas that I think needs to be fixed.
Okay. Yes, quality review, I guess, part of the job. And when did you make the conscious sort of shift from sort of standard tech Linux and then into sort of security as we sort of know it today?
It's interesting because even before, when I was in infrastructure and development, and even when I was a student, I've always been on the side of, I guess that's my the flow of perfectionism, of hardening and getting things right and doing the nitty-gritty. So when I was working in infrastructure, I was working with the CISO at the time on security standards. We've had opportunities to work on a few security incidents as well. And I had this interest for always improving things, right? And so that's why I at the time I was interested in Six Sigma, in Lean. I took the certification for ISO 27001. To me, that was like, okay, how do you mix quality and security management? And so that was, I don't know, I guess a personal attraction towards getting things right. And if there is one thing that has been true for the last 20 years to me is security is a result of getting IT right, not specific function per se. 90% of breaches today have to do with basic stuff that were not done right. And so that's always the angle I've done, and that's how I got into security to begin with. Moved on. When I moved to Japan, CISO asked me whether I would be interested in doing the InfoSec and business continuity for Asia. So I took it as a, didn't take me more than 5 seconds to say, that's one of the things I was looking forward to. So I don't know, there is no declic moving from infrastructure to security. If you're not already mindful of security when you're doing your day-to-day job, then you won't do security well to begin with in the future. Yeah. Right.
Okay. So what year was that then? So you moved from France to Japan?
So I moved to France to Japan twice. So the second time was in 2006 with a company called XCIP. Became Natixis after. So really moved as part of infrastructure, and I guess a year and a half later, this is where I started being more officially involved in doing the BCP and InfoSec and access management and all those things. It was just a natural transition, really.
Right, cool. And what was living in Japan like? How did you sort of adapt to the culture, environment?
Interesting question. Well, how was living in Japan? I loved it, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have married a Japanese. I know Japan is absolutely a great country. If you're open to challenge your own mindset and your culture. It's not for the faint-hearted. Yeah. If you expect to leave work before 10 p.m., maybe that's not where you should be working. But I would think it was the right time, the right moment. I actually moved back to Japan because I wanted it, right? So I've spent 1 year in Japan at the end of my studies and came back to France, and I really was attracted to the culture of there. So opportunities, a lot of things to do. And it was, as part of the company I was already part of, a lot of things to build. So a lot of challenge, a lot of things you wouldn't be exposed if you stay at home, right? Yeah. Especially large organization. You usually have a very narrow scope of work. So that was really the ideal state. Large organization, but small footprint and everything to build. So basically, I was lucky to work from building data center and trading rooms, trading floor networks to do security and business continuity. So it was very, very, very interesting few years. Yeah.
Awesome. And then when did you make the move from Japan to Hong Kong?
Financial crisis decided for us, most of the banks, it's kind of, here's your package if you want to, or go to Hong Kong. No, that was very, like many banks, foreign banks, we reduced operations in Japan at the time. And so we still needed security to be done. So it wasn't the issue.
So I guess for you, it was still pretty kind of like bulletproof through that. It was still, like you say, it was still needed, like business continuity management, disaster recovery. That's all absolutely crucial to keep an organization running.
Well, do you know a bank that doesn't think security is important?
That's
No, that's definitely necessary. In the time, probably less obvious than it is today. But I don't think that today any business would completely ignore it, right? It's a question of, I think it's more on the small businesses, a question of being able to afford it, and how do you address it when you already are scarce on resources and when you already have business things to be done. That's a problem that doesn't exist in banking or regulated industry, because obviously regulators make it mandatory for you to have it. But definitely this is an important field, right? I mean, the sums at play are just not, from a risk perspective, it's just not something you can even decide to not do, right? Just,
and then Hong Kong, you ticked off Hong Kong and then you moved to Singapore.
Yeah.
What was it that attracted you to Singapore?
Let's say that the 5 stars of Singapore got aligned for me. At that time, I had been working for Xis plus Natixis, which was the same company, for close to 11 years. Had been the CISO of the company for 6 years, 7 years. I can't calculate anymore. So I think I was looking for a change. I was looking for a new challenge, something a little bit different and more demanding. And so when Prudential came and say, hey, would you be interested? I was like, yes. And my wife was pregnant at the time, so the opportunity to move to Singapore rather than living in those states, it's absolutely unaffordable for most of the people. And so when you start to grow a family, and I grew up in a countryside of France, so already not having a garden is hard for me.
Okay.
So
you're a country boy.
I am.
Okay. Having lived in Hong Kong for a long time, what's your sort of take on what's going on there at the moment?
That's a very, very disheartening situation right now. Nothing surprising. It's you cannot honestly expect that that China will let Hong Kong say they're not part of China, right? They're part of China. It's just that I think this is a hard transition to be gone, right? It's a lot of people who are still hoping to keep the things the way they are, and it's honestly not possible. The fact that it becomes through strength and through rather than a gracious transition is a bit disheartening, because I love the country and this land of opportunities, great people. But that's what happens when you have two very opposing opinions who can't talk to each other.
Yeah. It seems like it's a really tricky situation for all concerned. But I mean, from a security perspective as well, and as a recruiter, I've already noticed a trend of headcount being moved from Hong Kong to Singapore, and even actually pulling people out of Hong Kong and moving them to the Singapore office, because it's really kind of a risk, sort of keeping them there. So it seems quite it's a tough situation. I'm not sure what the future is going to.
Honestly, I think this trend of transitioning out of Hong Kong started before the events and the demonstrations. I would say already 5 years ago. I think Singapore has bet more towards building an IT system, an IT expertise than Hong Kong did. And so, attracting more talent, growing the people locally, and actively managing this and driving this agenda. So already a lot of the IT expertise has moved to Singapore. Singapore is very lucky to be in a situation where you're close to Malaysia, close to India. So for companies who are looking for the diversity of outsourcing, it's very well located. And so security is just following wherever technology expertise is, right? Even though security is not a technology problem only, is still very much linked to technology. And so it's a move we've been seeing for quite a while already. That's depends on the business. If you're pretty close to China and to all the outsourcing, obviously you have more chances and more needs to be in Hong Kong. But in terms of expertise, I've seen the scarcity coming in Hong Kong for quite a while already.
Right. Yeah. And now I guess it's just kind of coming to roost, like today, and what we see in the media. It's all, yeah.
Well, I think right now,
escalating.
I think right now, it just makes it clear for anyone who still had a doubt. For the next few months at least, and touching wood, it's only a few months.
Yeah, let's hope so.
It's gonna be a little bit tight, but let's hope that they find a situation and a way to appease people and not just antagonize more the people who have a different opinion, because there is no solution and there is no exit from the top if you alienate a part of your population. So it's very important for people to start opening up and discussing.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to your career, it was quite interesting actually, because as I say, following people's careers and career path, it seems a very easy transition to go from sort of consulting or vendor. The natural move is to then move client side, sort of later on in their career. You've kind of done it the other way around, and I think from the outside, reading it, it seems that it's a much easier transition, whereas you kind of done it the other way around.
Yeah, I know.
So, first of all, what was it attracted you to Pivotal and to the role and dealing with customers again?
So it's interesting because I've always said that I would never work for a vendor. And honestly, when the transition happened, I had a few opportunities, and I could go back to financial institution, being a CISO for a financial institution here in the region, or I received this phone call regarding there is this company called Pivotal, it really went back to my core and to what I was mentioning earlier. When I look back into the problems we have today in security, right? We talk about it's a traditional practices of we do vulnerability scannings, we try to get things patched, and we do IPHE. But the real core issues are not in security. The real core issues are in IT, right? So the fact that you can't patch is not the problem of you don't have good security. It's because your system have not been designed to be easy to patch. The fact that your secrets are leaked is because you haven't designed your systems the right way. So I looked into it, and I dug into what Pivotal is doing, and Pivotal is really an interesting company, right? They do with their labs, they do a lot of the human culture transformation of agile, and they emphasize a lot that it's not about buying a solution, right? If you buy a platform, great, you have a good platform. That won't bring you anywhere. It's really transforming the way you work and transforming the way people work together to solve business outcomes. That is really important. And so I looked into it and I realized, what do? Do I have a choice between managing issues or solving them? And I took a bet. I was like, let's take a try and let's see if we could work towards an industry and an approach that I truly believe. I won't say solve the problem because it's never 100% solved, but really, really potentially can improve a lot of the security issues we have today. And if you look at the threats we have coming in, right, we have adversaries are more and more advanced. You have AI coming in, you have IoT and industrial control systems to manage. So the things to manage keep increasing. But for most of the organization, we're not we haven't found a way to actually reduce the BAU of the existing system, right? Mm-hmm. And so we know we have scarcity of people in security, and unless we actually solve the problems that we have today, that we've basically have been having for the last 20 years, we won't be able to swallow what's coming in, right? And so I looked into it. I was like, okay, let's take a gamble that I can move towards solving these issues. And the other aspect of it, my MBTI tells me that I'm an altruistic person, so I really enjoy helping people. So I was like, okay, let's go, let's do it. And that was really personal choice. It's not because vendors are great or not. It's actually Pivotal is not a security vendor, right? So I chose it because it is not a security vendor. But very, very interesting, and I'm glad that it's this move, actually.
Great.
Yeah.
What advice would you give anybody that is maybe looking for a move? Somebody who's maybe kind of stuck where they are at the moment. They kind of crave for that a little bit more variety, like you say, solving problems for different organizations. How have you been able to sort of make that transition? What did you have to change about how you go about your day?
It's it's mind-boggling to change. It's very different, but interestingly, and I would say it's not for everyone, but very interestingly, I would advise everyone to actually move for a vendor or a role for a few years. And the very interesting thing is looking at what we are doing from an outside perspective is eye-opener.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe I shouldn't say that on record, but from outside you see inefficiencies that are striking, right? And you're like, oh wow, yeah, now I understand. And so I think it's very important to step out and have the opportunity to look at diversity of challenge. That's really what I enjoy today. So the decision to move towards a vendor side or not is very personal. I would say if today you have this already internally, you already have this culture of customer service, of solving problems and of continuous improving and helping others, then do the move, right? It's very good because you will have this opportunity to learn so much more, right? You deal with different industries, different maturity. What we see, and particularly since I'm not a security vendor, I see the effect of organizational silos and established practices that we consider best practices, the effect they have in making our companies still and unable to change, right? I see the effect of of risk aversion in actually increasing risk instead of reducing it. So it's very important to do it. But personally, in terms of, is it for everyone? No, it's not for everyone. It is good if you have this, if naturally you have this customer service kind of mindset of approach. And if you do, I would suggest you take at least a few years in the vendor side. Whether you stay there or not is another topic, but that's very important to even introspection of what I was doing. I've basically was looking at what I've been doing for the last 12 years from outside. Like, okay. Some of them were like, okay, that was the actual good thing to do at the time, but now I see that it might not be ideal for the agility of the organization.
Yeah. Do you think that probably gives you a bit of an advantage because you've been in their shoes before, you've been on that side before, so you can kind of,
Definitely. Well, actually, you were asking whether should client go to the vendor side. I think vendor should hire clients. We definitely need people, especially today, who have experience in actually running things, right? And I'm in a privileged position in security, and as I mentioned, like we see that security issues usually happens on IT not being implemented ideally. It's easy to say, in practice it's much more complex than that. But that's not buying a product that helps you, right? It's not moving to a cloud, it's not moving, buying an antivirus that helps you. What we observe is understanding what is the best way of managing it and constantly fine-tuning it is the important aspect. And when you're a vendor, you drink your own Kool-Aid. Let's be honest sometimes, and so you're convinced, and you're right. Your product helps, but unless you have the experience of what the customers are going through, you don't have the empathy, or you wouldn't really being able to understand that it's more than just buying the product and deploying it. You need to help your customer through their own organization to convince their stakeholders that this is the right way to change the way they do things. I'm lucky today to say that basically 80% of my advisory is mostly about people and organizational change and making people change the way they look at things. So both ways. You need vendors to hire clients, and you need some clients to move to the vendor side. Diversity is very important anyway.
Yeah, for sure. How did you get involved in, or when did you get involved in keynote speaking? I noticed that you've been sort of involved in keynote speaking before.
It started through, keynote and panels I've been doing for quite a while already in Hong Kong. I've been invited to a few panels on risk management and security. Started moving to keynote speaking. Let's be honest, vendors are more open to having and going speaking about keynote speaking. It's when I moved to Pivotal, I realized how much people need to hear. People need to hear different ways or different practices. And that's very important, right? If you do security, and there is a lot of very dedicated security teams who do everything correctly, but there is, in a way, opportunities you're not seeing because they don't see outside of it. And I've learned more about security by non-security people than by security people. Sitting with engineers who are designing the cloud solutions or who are designing stuff and can explain, but this is absolutely amazing. And if you hear developers talking about the problems they're solving for cloud, for streaming, for the technology problems of today have tremendous impact on security, right? But when we're in the security field, we tend to listen to threat actors, to the latest vulnerabilities, the latest hack. We don't really see the opportunities of how we could solve the future problems. I'm usually joking, saying you're familiar with site reliability engineering, SRE. So it's a new practices of infrastructure of continuous improvement that is advocated by Google. And they usually quote it by saying, SRE is what happens when you ask a developer to do infrastructure.
Okay.
And basically what we need to do is to do the same for security, ask a developer to look at security. And so this is really the drive. And I realize there is a lot of opportunities, a lot of messages that are unheard. And that's really where I got to go and say, hey, we need to talk about this, not just the whole fear, uncertainty, and doubt that security vendors love.
Yeah, I guess you get a. So for you, it was more the kind of sort of noble pursuit of getting the message out there, making sure there's a lot of undercurrent issues that are happening in security, and just getting that message out there.
I'm pretty lucky in a way. My personal belief aligned with the interest of the company, right? So it's also good for the company to let people understand the impact of what we are doing better. And to be honest, right, security is often seen as a blocker from a vendor side. When you go and you deploy amazing technologies or amazing transformation program, and then you have the security team say, whoa, no. This is also a challenge that that vendors are having. So anything that can help get security understand that it's for their own good as well is necessary. So I think every incentive or very interest aligned in this case.
So one of the things I noticed when I started headhunting for CISOs and CIOs, there's a lot of them that are involved in sort of keynote speaking. Do you think it's an advantage, or do you think it could potentially act as a blocker to securing that that role that you really want?
Yeah, good question. I would think, unless you're saying something stupid, it's not negative, but it's definitely a positive. Today, we have to be honest, a lot of the role of a CISO is less about the technology or deploying security solutions than to actually get the organization on board. So we need leaders, we need people who can convey a message, accordingly. And so I don't know if it's keynote that makes you positive or the fact that those people have developed the ability to express those ideas and those concepts in an understandable and intelligible way that makes them want to do keynotes. But that's definitely an important aspect of the role of a CISO today. I often remind people that security is not achieving. I mean, it's not securing your network or securing something. It's you need to make your organization more secure, and it's achieved through the whole organization. Right? Yeah. You don't blame people for clicking on the links. You just make them more able to not click on the link, but also in terms of IT organization to be more able to respond to spot and respond to security incidents. So it's really about engaging the rest of the organization. So these are skills that are very important to have, and leadership and people engagement. I think is probably the most needed skill in security leadership today.
Yeah, no, that's one. I've always believed that, and whenever I've interviewed people that have got sort of keynotes that are available on YouTube, it's a great way for board members or CIOs or CROs, whoever the decision maker is, to get kind of a window into how they operate, how they convey their message. Yeah,
and I would say there is also another aspect is when you go to keynotes. You don't go to a keynote if you say the typical we are here to prevent risk, we are here to protect the organization and make sure nothing happens. It's usually the people who are more business focused that will say it.
Yeah.
And that's important, right? Because security is often seen as a blocker and is unfortunately sometimes a blocker. Under the helm of saying we need to make sure that nothing happens, when nothing happens, your company goes bankrupt, right? So, so I would say these keynote speakers also have to have this mindset of business-friendly security. So sure. It's a good message.
Yeah, for sure. How important do you think it is to in today's sort of world of tech? Is it for CISOs to understand cloud and the cloud adoption?
Well, that's an interesting question. We're in 2020. If you don't understand the cloud, then maybe you shouldn't be a CISO. I'll be honest, right? Already when I was 15 years ago, I was managing infrastructure, and what we were doing, you could equate it to a cloud, right? Fully automated, deploying hundreds of servers were not a question, and that was normal, right? And so when I look back 15 years later, the fact that some people are still uncomfortable with the comprehensive automation of the data center is boggling me. I think there's still a confusion between what cloud is and what public cloud or cloud providers are. These are two different things. You can do cloud in premises if you want to, right? It's a technology, it's an approach. That said, it's a question of risk, right? Interestingly enough, often you see organizations who are reluctant to go to the cloud, also the ones who are not really as good as doing their own IT as they should be, and so they would be the one benefiting the most. AWS, Azure, and all those companies handled millions of attacks a day, right? So they are better at IT and they're better at security and a number of things. And that's really an opportunity to say, okay, all those churn and those day-to-day noise, you outsource it to some people who know how to do it so that you can focus your security resources on what matters, which is designing security for the business, aligned for the business, designing controls that are relevant for your value stream and not the usual, let's look whether we have a vulnerability in this server or let's patch it. Or honestly, we lose a lot of resources today. And we hear so much people saying, hey, we have scarcity of resources in security. It's like, yeah, but if you were asking security people to actually do security, which is offensive security, being better at threat intel and informing the organization, working with the developers on actually identifying issues and fixing them, If you were not doing those BAU scans and all the stuff, then we wouldn't have this scarcity of resources. So it's an opportunity. Obviously, there are risks to it. It's not something you can blindly jump in, but it's a great opportunity for a number of organizations. And the way it's moving today towards decentralized clouds and edge clouds will solve a lot of the issues we have of putting everything in one basket, right? So we have opportunities coming in.
What are the biggest kind of risks when putting all of the applications into the cloud? What stands out for you? What needs to be addressed?
Well, you obviously have a vendor lock-in risk. Love it or not, when you do something with one of your cloud provider, you're stuck with these cloud providers because the cost of reprogramming everything on another cloud would be tremendous. And so this is an issue. If you don't design it properly, they have a good uptime, but they go down once in a while, right? So it's all the question of are you designing properly so that you're not stuck in the hands of someone else who might not have your best interest in mind, right? It's still a business, profitable companies. They manage their own interest in before the others, even though they are customer centric. They wouldn't put their own interest at risk. But yeah, I think the vendor and the governance for the average of companies would be the biggest issue. After, when you deal with some sensitive data, government data, then or banking, you have like geographic boundaries would be a very very tricky aspect to manage. But the industry is facing the same problem. So overall solutions are coming. The national security law of Hong Kong will be an interesting question to answer on this topic of cloud and ownership of data
Yeah, I mean that's going to be very grey at the moment, isn't it?
That is great, and that's something that's probably already on the agenda of every board or chief risk officer of what does the potential impact. Are we concerned on the issue of our data being exposed to government agency? But honestly, that should be on the agenda of everyone since a long time ago, because the US has the same laws.
Yeah.
Right. And so it really depends on your business model, and that's really where the discussion today has. It's not, you don't have one size fits all security. It's really a decision of, depending on your business, depending on what is relevant for you, what you think are the adversaries or your competitors. It's a decision that you won't say, I don't go to Hong Kong, I go to Hong Kong. It's, you need to be mindful of the different risk and what it means for you, right?
Yeah. Where do you think the industry is heading, and is there anything that you've noticed in terms of like trends, or what do you think is going to be the next big thing in security?
People. I could tell you that the next big thing is IoT and AI. Everyone will tell you this. These are the opportunities and challenges at the same time. The artificial intelligence, even if the word today is a little bit pompous for what it is, so enlightened computers certainly give opportunities for security to get faster, but also give opportunities for the adversary to automate. And we can see it in terms of the speed at which you go from reconnaissance to confirmation is definitely a new challenge for organizations. And the fact that we have devices everywhere, mobility everywhere, call it 5G, IoT, and all those things are also a new challenge. When we started moving towards the clouds, and we moved from what we call moving from the model of the castle with perimeter defense and well-controlled environment towards an airport where you have data a little bit everywhere. Now it's going to be even more more challenging. With COVID today, working from home or from anywhere has become not a question anymore. And so this mobility and the management of the data and where your data goes and how you protect decentralized data is going to be a big issue. So that's for the technical aspect. But I do think that today's next big thing we need to deal with is people. The way we work. There is no more space for siloed organization where risk does risk, security does security, IT does IT. We've seen it. The reason why everyone is going to Agile and this DevOps movement is because when you have siloed and you have people who are self-reinforcing their views on this is a way to do it, you actually break down your organization. You slow down your organization compared to being able to really align your teams and your ways of working to your value stream. And so that means we need to get people of diverse background, of diverse expertise to start to talk to each other. And that's what DevOps is about today, is really about how do you get security and developers to not bark at each other. And that's one of the issues we have, and same with risk. If you look at the risk, we have opportunities to do things better in this aspect. HR, at the end of the day, a lot of it is about aligning incentives of people. Yeah. If you really care about creating the right culture, where it's really about making sure that you incentivize everyone. And today, people in organizations, people who are incentivized for security are only the security teams.
Yeah.
So how do we want to solve the security problems in the developers, in the in infrastructure, or to get the smart guys who design something to really care about security if we don't incentivize the right way? So these are the things that we need to deal with at the organizational level, is how do you get everyone to paddle in the same direction. That means getting the organization to care more about security and to value more security, but also getting security to care more about business development and not being, this is a threat, or I'm going to block Zoom even though my business really needs it right now because potentially there is a security issue. We've seen that in the last few months when everything went back, as like security teams who were saying, I don't care if my business is hurt, this is bad. It's like, well, maybe not, right? At the end of the day, it's a question of aligning, of you're here to develop your business, right? And it's probably, to go back to your question of moving to the vendor side, what you're forced to when I would say everyone is working for a vendor, right? Even on your client, you should be thinking, I'm working for a vendor. You should be doing security to develop your company.
Yeah.
And that's really an important aspect of what's coming in the next few years. I think it's still taking, but more and more we hear people being interested in this cultural aspect of how do we get things together. And so it's a movement that is snowballing. So I certainly hope it's hit the ground in the next few years, because otherwise we're in for a very challenging time if we don't lean ourselves out. The attacks and the threat landscape is increasing exponentially. So we won't be ready in most organizations unless we really start working more efficiently.
Yeah. I mean, over the last sort of 3 or 4 months, there's going to be a lot of people that are sort of rethinking, perhaps maybe their career, maybe coming to the end of the road, or, there's a lot of people that are, being made redundant. Is there any advice that you would give for somebody that is looking to pivot into the industry, pivot into security, that's maybe got a good technical grounding in technology or?
Sure. What are the roles that will be highly in demand? Offensive security is not disappearing anytime soon, and I think it's probably the most important aspect of security tomorrow. Because tools are great for finding vulnerabilities, but they won't find the right thing. And organization will need to increase more and more their ability to find vulnerabilities and fix them fast. And so you definitely, whether it's pen test, red teaming, or bug bounties, offensive security will only increase in the next future. and it's something that people can learn by themselves. If you have a good understanding of technology already today, you have a lot of resources to get in, right? And there is a massive demand in the industry, so even people who are not super expert or have opportunities to find jobs in the field. So if you're trying to pivot, that's a good area to move in. Another very in demand threat intel, I think it's harder to move in today. A lot of it, you basically come from law enforcement or threat intel background to get in. I mean, you can at the junior level, but as a mid to end of career, it's going to be harder to go and move back, because you need to go down to fairly junior roles. So unless you have the expertise on it, AppSec, just code, or at least even if you're not a good developer, you need to understand what it is to develop an application. And more organizations today start developing themselves or taking their own integration and their own development seriously, and that's a field that is very important. And so anyone who has this mindset of finding flaws and can understand the logic of coding and all those things is very much a field that is open for opportunities today. There is, again, not enough people who do it for the demand, right? That's probably the field where we have real scarcity of resources today. That requires a good knowledge, but you can learn it as well. A lot of resources today.
Yeah, you're actually one of the very few people that have said that, actually. Application security, and companies are constantly trying to build out their own capability in application security. So yeah, that is definitely something on the rise.
Yeah, interestingly enough, as I mentioned, a lot of people who taught me about security were not security people, and I've learned a lot about security from developers. And I mean, particularly in Pivotal, if you look at it, they are not security developers, but if you talk about security, you're like, yeah, this is like. There is a lot of knowledge in our developers today. Most of the developers are actually really, really good and really knows. And so bringing the barrier. So either you can get some of them to start looking at security, but usually, I mean, it's a question of whether they're interested, if they like building, to what do you want to do security. But again, this point of incentivizing, there's a lot of benefits we would have in security by opening our gate to non-security people. I in my career, I think my best hires didn't come from security, didn't have any security background.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do in security is having a good understanding of what the others, or what the field on the other side does, and being able to have this rational thinking of like, okay, let's find a middle ground. These are the risks. Let's discuss how could we find ways to remediate it or to compensate for it. And maybe Gartner calls it CARTA, like the continuous adaptive risk and control. It's nothing more than sit down with your things, identify what is the problem, what could go wrong, build a control for it, and then make sure that your developers are not inadvertently reintroduced it tomorrow, right? So, and that's really where you have a lot of resources needed in terms of writing those tests, writing those tools in security, to make sure that authentication is well done, right? Today, increasing number of vulnerabilities and breach come from poorly implemented authentication, right?
Yeah.
The actual implementation is not that hard. The test is not that hard. We need people to go and say, okay, let's make sure that we have it, and we don't make a mistake 6 months down the line by just misconfiguring something that everyone thought was deployed, but because you have something misconfigured, it doesn't work this way. We need more security testing, and we can't. I mean, security vendors will hate me for that. But today we need to augment those security tools with things that are tailored and that really help developers, that really speak directly to developers, to tell them, look, it's not against you. These are the key things you need to. We want to make sure that when you develop, you don't think about security. You can think about developing the business, and you don't have the fear of introducing a vulnerability.
Yeah.
If you sit with developers, you will realize a lot of them actually care about security.
Yeah.
But they have business to develop. They have other
Yes.
things to do, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't ask them to spend 100% of the time or 20% of the time to just look at security. They need to develop the business. What we need in cybersecurity is to make them more efficient by making sure that they don't make those mistakes that create security, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the mindset that we have to do, and the skills I think are missing today.
Yeah. And I guess that links back to what you were saying before as well about, breaking silos and more collaboration is what is going to make for a healthier organization.
If you sit with developers, the most recurring question is like, I am fine implementing all the security requirements. Don't dump 40 pages security policy on me that is half of it is irrelevant for what I'm trying to do. Just tell me what I need to do, right? And that's really today this aspect of helping them start the project and focus on the first few weeks of an MVP is really you want to get a very quick feedback whether your idea is going to generate revenue, whether it works or not. You don't want to do security, but you don't want to spend your time doing it. So making it easier by having people available to help, but by also automating a lot of those build and those things so that they don't have to do it with it. They don't have to tick the boxes on compliance is really an aspect that we need to do today, because if you look at the efficiency and if you ask a developer or any organization, if you ask them to spend 20% of their time to do security, then that's 20% of their time they're not contributing to the revenue of the company. Right?
Yeah.
And I love to think that everyone in the company is here to develop the company. I hope so. So this should be really much front and center. And it's really bottom line if you want to break those silos between security and the rest of the organization. And this perception that security is annoying, in reality, it's not. It's just this perception because we tend to not convey the message that we're here to develop the message, the business. I was reading recently some risk people saying our job is to make sure that people don't make mistakes. It's like, no. If you don't make mistakes and people don't learn, you don't develop. That means the day a mistake is being done, no one has the expertise to actually know how to react to it. You want people to make mistakes. That's the whole principle of chaos engineering. What you want is to make sure that the mistake doesn't cost money or doesn't cost an unbearable amount of money to the company. And that's really this mindset that we need to embrace in security of how do we make sure that we're not here to say you're not going to introduce vulnerabilities. We're here to make sure as an organization we make it easy for developers to develop, and we find problems fast and we fix them fast. And that requires working together, right? Saying, this is the message we need to go and convey. And that's
cool. Well, you continue spreading the good word.
Yeah.
And what's next for you? Where do you see your career, going to in the next, 3-5 years?
That's a good question. I guess I've been too happy in the last 18 months. I've not been asking me too much this thing. I still have this calling of helping people. So anyone who knock at my door and tells me, "Hey, I have a problem. I need help," I'll be the first to jump in. There is opportunities. There is still, I think, a crowd of people who need help. So probably vendors a little bit more. If really we contribute, and I think what's happening today in cloud technologies, and again, let's not call it cloud, let's call it cloud native technologies that have been built for the cloud. What's happening today is a massive opportunity for security. The way developers are looking at declarative programming and automating a number of things has potential for solving a lot of this challenge we have in security operations today. And so I might want to make sure that this happens. Or I'm fairly open, but I think today there is still opportunities on fixing things. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I wish you the very best of luck with that. And thank you so much for coming down today. It's really good to see you, as always.
Thank you.
And I'll see you soon.